Do you have a scrapbook paper that you love so much you just don't want to cut it? That's kind of how I felt about these. Look at how beautiful this swirly paper is with that gold foil. It's busy and it's beautiful, but I have an idea. I think I'm going to tame the busyness, use it in small doses, and make it work wonderfully for my Hawaii photos. So I was kind of toying between these two sheets here because my photos actually have red and pink. So I could go with just pink, which isn't quite as busy. And then this one has red and hot pink, but it reads a little busier, I think, because it's darker colors. So I'm gonna play around with these two. Again, use them in small doses to tame them down. I actually have another layout I've done before that I'm kind of scrap lifting from myself. So I'll bring that in at the end so we can compare. There's all of these other beautiful patterns too. I've got the fronts and backs flipped over. So every paper has a, foiled kind of swirly looking one side, and then the opposite side is not foiled and it's a little bit more tone on tone. So I'll probably bring in some of those as well. Like this one might be a good one to bring in also. So let's go ahead and clear this up and I'll start getting going on my design idea. So off screen, I kind of figured out the direction of my paper and I thought I would walk you through it so you could see my decision process. And for reference, this is what I'm scrap lifting from myself. I really like this band of 3x4s going across. In this case, it tells the story of his new haircut, but I just like the look and it works well with this idea I had of making the strips, not too big pieces so that they're not overwhelming. And I think that this is gonna look nice. So in my inspiration layout, I've got two different patterns that I tore on the top and bottom, but I think in this one I'm gonna do three because when I tried just the two patterned papers, it seemed a little bit too busy to me. I really like this. This is the back of one of the marbly papers, but since it's a hot pink and a light pink, that contrast makes it seem a little busier, and it's got a lot of speckles up against the kind of specklies in this one. And since this is dark and this is dark, there wasn't enough contrast between the two. So then I thought, well, what if I replace that with cardstock and do these two layers? But the cardstock felt too plain. So then I thought, well, what if we put the cardstock in the middle as a separator? And I really like that because I really like this color of the hot pink. It works nicely with my photos. And then I like that this one has some hot pink but a lot of red, so then it starts bringing in the red from my photos and ties the pink and red together without being right up next to my photos because I think it's too busy like that. So this is what I landed on, but just thought I would show you the other options of the marbly papers too. I thought about this one, but then that's too much pink now that I have these two pink patterns. And then there's this one that has pink and red, but there's so much white and I didn't want that much white. This one, a lot of them are very similar, but this has like more lines of the marbly and the gold foil, whereas this is more, I don't know, mixed looking. I don't know how to explain that. And then this one is more pink, but again, a lot more white, and I really like the red mixed in. So I'm gonna go back to this first one I showed you, and I'm going to tear all three of these layers. By the way, this paper just released from Stampin' Up! This week. It's part of the online exclusives. So I will leave a link down below for you if you're interested in this, and you can also check out the other new online exclusive releases. All right, so let's go ahead and start tearing the papers. So I am just going to tear off a little bit more than I think I'm going to use because I can always tuck extra under. And now I have this side too, so I can just bring in my trimmer and trim a straight edge to this side. And then that way I have one edge that is ripped and one that's not. So I can kind of like fold this back and that will give the illusion of having that white edge. So I'll do that in just a bit, but I'm gonna go ahead and do that for the top and the bottom for each of these. But I want to keep in mind, I want the title to be down here. This is actually going to go up a little bit more, and I want the title to be down here. So when I tear this piece, I want this chunk to be a little longer and then kind of go up, which is what I did in my original layout. So since I'm tearing, let's see, I'll have to have this side be the taller one and then go up, since it'll be flipped around like that. So we'll start a little lower here and do something like this, and then kind of come in. And I can always fine tune and adjust it later if I want, you know, this to go up higher or whatever. So then if we tuck that under there, I've got a little bit of extra space here for my title built in. And then I'll do the same thing on this side, where I will just cut a straight edge. And on the top, I don't need that extra piece. So what I'll do is I'll probably just come in and even this out a little bit. And once I lay everything out, like I said, I can fine tune it a little bit more, but I just want to get that in place. And then, yeah, that's going to have to be torn a little bit more. And then I'm going to do the cardstock. Now, the cardstock doesn't have a white core, so we're not going to get that look unless you were to use one of Close to My Heart's cardstocks. Or Stampin' Up is going to be introducing all the colors in the white core cardstock eventually, but it's not here yet. So I actually, with this paper, I like the edge that's not torn. So I'm going to turn that over and trim that. And then this will go in between each of my layers like that. So I might make this go up just a little bit higher. I've got a little bit of extra space there, but I'm liking how that's looking so far.
I'm going to go ahead and speed this up while I fine tune all of these pieces and get them torn just how I want them. And I thought I would take this opportunity to tell you about these photos. So I took these photos right after one of the several times that we got our favorite acai bowls. So we were on Kauai this past summer, and we were down on Poipu Beach, or near Poipu Beach, and there was this little grocery store, like this little local hole-in-the-wall grocery store, and apparently that is where you can get some of the most amazing foods. There's like these little stalls. I'm sure those of you who have been to Hawaii know exactly what I'm talking about. There's like little food stalls, or in this place it was like a smoothie and acai bar in the very back of this tiny little grocery store, and oh my gosh, they were so good. So I posted a picture of this partly finished layout in my customer group and in my teen group, and one of my friends, April, was saying how yummy that looks, and I said, yes, we were obsessed. And she said, that sounds like a good title for your layout. And so I am going to call this layout Obsessed, because we were totally obsessed with these acai bowls. We went there every day for breakfast after we discovered them. I think it was at least 4 or 5 times. So anyways, I'm finishing up here, and then we will get to the embellishing part.
Okay, I have my background glued down and I have my title cut. I don't have it adhered yet because I'm not exactly sure where it will go, but I used this mini alphabet set. I love this because it cuts all the letters at once, one pass-through die cut machine, and there are multiples of some of the more popular ones. So I did have to run this through twice to get 3 S's. It comes with 2, but I just put a little piece over the S's for the second time around. Then for these leaves, I used this older Sprigs and Leaves set from Close to My Heart. So if you have this, there's these 2 sizes, and then there's the little veining too. So that's what these look like. I used Granny Apple Green cardstock in the 2-tone. So there's 2-tone cardstock for this color and a handful of other colors that go with the scrapbooking kits. So I use the dark for this background leaf, and then the light side for that veining, and then the opposite for this little one. And then I also did just a little bit of ink blending just to give it a little bit of visual texture on those too. Now these things are so cool, and I'm going to show you how I did some of these flowers because this is a really fun new set. This is Happy Hibiscus. There's a stamp and die set and an embossing folder. So it's a hybrid embossing folder, and the dies will cut at the same time. So I'm going to show you how I did that. So there's multiple looks that you can get with these flowers, which is really cool. So this is the stamp. So these stamps right here are one piece. So you can see that in my Misty right here, and I have this in my Misty because that's what I'm going to show you. And then these other pieces here will fill in, and that's what I did over here. I'll show you that in a second. And then the embossing folder will cut out these three at the same time. And so you put it in, so when you have the embossing folder closed and you see the Stampin' Up logo, you open it up and you put the dies with the cut side up on that side of the embossing folder, and it, for the lack of a better word, it locks in place. It doesn't necessarily lock, but you can see how it's just kind of like stuck in there, and then you'll sandwich it while you put it on top of your paper and then run it through your die cutting machine. And you need to make sure that you put the folded side through your die cutting machine first, otherwise the pressure of this 3D embossing folder could break that fold right there. So let me show you how that would work for this. So this is where I stamped the outline stamps, and then I went in with these individual stamps. So those ones are all individual, and I stamped inside and just lined it up through the clear block. So I did Melon Mambo is the hot pink, and then Pretty in Pink is the light pink. And so you can see what a fun look that gets with the outline and the inside to color it. And then I would just go and take my die and line it up like this, tape it in place, and then I'll go run that through the die cutting machine. And that is how that looks. So you have the outline and you get the colored in part all done for you with the stamp, and then there's even some highlights with the little white areas. So I did another technique on these ones. They're just a little bit different but similar. So with these ones, I stamped the outline, and then I had to line it up carefully in the embossing folder to cut them out too. So I'm going to show you how I did that. And then with these ones, I just embossed and cut them out and then blended on the color. So they're very similar, but you have to do some additional lining up to stamp first and then line up. So that's what I want to show you. And then I also added some gold enamel effects on these. It looks so pretty. It's this product right here. It's kind of like a yellowy gold, and I'll show you how I did that too. All right, so I've got this in my Misty. You definitely don't need a Misty. I just like to use it. And then I used Melon Mambo and Pretty in Pink to do the center part. So I'm going to do the stamping in Melon Mambo, and I am just going to very lightly tap it onto my stamps. And then you should only need one impression of the stamp. It's not hard to do, but if for some reason it doesn't stamp all the way, that's the beauty of the stamping platform. So now we have that, and you could just go ahead and cut it out and do it as is like this now, and it will look really pretty. But we want to take it a step further. So what I want to do is cut this out and emboss it at the same time. But if I put my little die on here, I can't see where to line it up. So what you want to do is line it up first, and then I want to take some tape. Now this is very light tack tape, so it's not going to rip my paper. Plus I've used it quite a few times. If you don't have a super light tack tape, just be careful to get the tape on the die and the outside so it doesn't cover the inside at all. So now that this is lined up, we can go ahead and put it into our embossing folder. But we have to turn it upside down and put it in this way so that we can see what we're doing. And I think that that is pretty much locked in place now. So what I'll do is carefully hold it, sandwich it, and then let go, and then I'll go run this through my die cutting machine. So here are all of my pieces. As you can imagine, if you were to do a larger piece of paper, you'd have all of these other flowers that you could cut out. And I actually did fussy cut out a bunch of the extra ones. The cuts are a little bit jagged. I'm not sure that I'll actually use them. I might kind of fix them up a little bit. They don't look as nice and tidy as the ones that die cut, definitely. But it's kind of fun. And then you can see here, I put the little enamel effects on the centers of these little flowers, which is fun. Okay, so let me get this out of the way. And actually, I did want to show you the hybrid embossing folder. Some people have wondered how it doesn't cut the embossing folder. Well, because the depth of the embossing folder and the paper is there, it prevents it from going all the way through. But you can see, I don't know if you can see that, you can see kind of a line where the die touches, but it's not going to cut all the way through, and it's not going to damage your folder. So it's really, really cool. All right, I've got my little silicone mat here, which is a non-stick surface, and I'm going to do a little inking treatment on these, as well as these little smaller pieces that are dies in the set. We're going to make those little plumerias. I think that's what they're supposed to be. But first, let's do these flowers that we embossed. And hopefully you can see all of that beautiful embossing that's on there. And we're going to bring it out even more with the ink. So you just need a little bit. I'm just going to rub it here with my pink blending brush. And I'm just going to tap off so we don't get a real harsh line or harsh mark. I'm going to start in the middle and just blend out. And you can do this as much or as little as you want. You can make it look like more of a realistic hibiscus. Or since it's a pretend hibiscus, then you can make it look however you want in whatever colors you want. But that looks really fun, and then it also helps to bring out that embossing so that it stands out more. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing for all three of these. Okay, all of these are done, and now for these ones, I'm just going to do a little bit in the center, as you can see on these ones that I've already done. So I've got a very small blending brush here. I think I got a set of these on Amazon. I don't have a ton of them. You can do whatever color you want. I decided on yellow because I already had a yellow small blending brush dirty, or with yellow on it. And then I also already have so much pink in my other flowers that I didn't want to do a pink center, so I think yellow will be good. And then I can always do like a pink gem in the center of these too, because I think plumerias have kind of like yellow and pink, some of them. I think they come in a bunch of different colors, but we definitely saw some gorgeous ones. There was a gorgeous garden in the backyard of the Airbnb that we stayed at, and there was plumerias and hibiscus and all the tropical flowers you could think of. So I'll be using those again when I scrapbook those photos too. But those look really pretty, and that was all it took. Super easy. Now for the enamel effects. Now I saw Chelsea do something similar in a layout she made in our membership group, the CDT membership, and it was so pretty, and her layout and cards were gorgeous. And by the way, our CDT membership is open right now, only until November 20th. So if you've ever thought about joining us, then head on over to cdtcreatives.com. I'll have that link down below. And there's no obligation. If you don't like it, you don't have to keep going. You can quit anytime. But we've got people that have been in there the whole almost 3 years, and they are loving it. We are loving the community. It is just so fun. So there we go. I just, used my finger and got a very thin layer on there, and it just gives the perfect little touch. And then you can also take this and do a little dot in the middle if you want to. I'll go ahead and do that just to show you. So there you go, and then that will dry really nicely too. So there's that one. You just have to be careful that you don't, smear it. So for this, I'm going to do the same thing, but then I also want some dots on the little, dots on top of the stamen, and I also want to paint the stamen. So I'm going to show you how I do that so I get a more precise coating of this. So first I've got that little coating, just a very thin layer. Looks really, really pretty. I could go ahead and do the same thing to this one. This is the one where I stamped the inside and the outline instead of doing the ink blending. And that's a really great look too. I think I'm gonna save that for another project though, and then I'll use this one for this project. Just because I think this one is a little bit busier and I think it'll compete more with that busy paper back there. This one is not quite as busy. It leaves a little more white space, so I kind of like that look. All right, so for the stamen, what I'm going to do is squeeze a little bit out, and there are probably 10 ways to do this as well. There's always multiple ways to do something. Hopefully I'm not going to get my head in the way, but I'm just going to take a little piercing tool. You could use a little paintbrush, or a little like stylus tool might even work better than this. I just don't have mine out. I always have this handy. And then I'm just going to dot these little dots on there. And then it'll make just tiny little dots instead of squeezing them out of the bottle, which you totally could do, and you just have to be careful that you're getting little dots. But sometimes that can be hard to make sure you're getting little dots. It comes out with a mind of its own sometimes. So I'll just get all of these, and then once I do that too, I'm going to do the stamen, and I'm just going to do a real thin layer, very skinny layer going on this little stamen too. I'm not quite finished with the dots, but you can get an idea of how that is looking. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this off camera, let everything dry, and then we'll come back and embellish. We are ready to assemble, and I forgot to show you that I had stamped and die cut some pineapples from this Pineapple Sunshine set. This is a stamp set that Close to My Heart came out with right before they closed, so I stamped and die cut the full pineapple out, which is fun because I've got some pineapple in my bowl, and then there's a little pineapple rings and chunks, so that could bring in more yellow. And then I also stamped and die cut out this stand tall, which I'm not sure I'll use, but that came from this Deck the Palms set. This also has a lot of images that could work for a tropical layout as well, but I really like the ones that I'm using here, so I'm just going to stick to those. But I got this from that set and just wanted to show you where it came from.
I almost forgot my original layout had a little tear at the bottom of the page, and I really like that element, so I'm going to do that here as well. I think I said this when I did my last layout, that I always forget to do this little technique, like tear a little piece out and have some paper peeking out from behind. And it's so fun. It just adds such a fun element, especially since we already have the tearing in the papers up in the strips above. So I tried the marble paper and I thought it was a little too much, too busy down there. So I went with that hot pink paper, and that's going to look really nice. So then that's going to be the third point of our embellishing. So I've got all my pieces off to the side. I just find this is so much easier when you start to embellish, when you have everything prepared, because then you can just grab things, and if something doesn't work, you put it back, you grab something else, instead of having to create embellishments as you go. So I'm basically making sure I have flowers in each embellishment cluster. When I do clusters, I like to have the same elements or very similar elements and colors in each cluster. And that really helps to create a balanced layout, in addition to making sure you have a visual triangle. That's always important. You hear us talk about that all the time, to have the visual triangle. So this is my second cluster, and then my third cluster is going to be down on the bottom. So I'm tucking in some of those little plumerias for some pops of yellow, as well as the pineapples. I like these pineapple chunks. I didn't really like the look of the pineapple rings in the cluster, so I'll just use a couple of the chunks. And I think I want to add some more flowers up here. I want this to be a bigger, more full cluster. And I decided to add the big pineapple up there because I had a lot of space. I purposely arranged my photos the way they are because the photo of my son has a lot of space to the left of him, and then that bowl photo to the left of that has a lot of space at the top. So then that gave me quite a bit of room for my cluster right there. Once I finished the embellishing and actually got it all laid down, I thought, oh my gosh, I really wish that I would have had some elements tucked up higher and kind of sticking out up above the paper strips up higher in that top cluster. So you're going to see how I fixed that. These little tiny leaves that came with the stamp set, I wasn't sure if I was going to use them, but I ended up using the ones that I stamped green on white just to add a little bit more variation. Now I thought I would show you just a little bit of my gluing process because you might wonder how I get everything to stay where I put it once I go to glue it down. And what I do is I just pretty much keep things how it is, and I use my Barely Art glue because it has a really skinny tip. And I just lift up the tips of my embellishments and stick a little glue under there. That way they kind of all stay in place. And for me, this is just the easiest way. I just have gotten used to doing it this way, and that's how I like to do it. So just thought I'd show you. And then for the title, I have my T-square ruler. So that's how I get things perfectly lined up if I'm using individual letters like this. And again, the same Barely Art glue. I love that fine tip bottle. If you haven't tried that Barely Art glue, I highly recommend it. It's kind of pricey, but it lasts a really long time because it's such a skinny tip. You don't use a ton at a time. All right, well, you know me and splatters. I wanted some splatters, and I decided I wanted gold, and to make it match the, little smears I did on my flowers, I'm using that same enamel effects, but I just watered it down just slightly so that it is splatterable. Is that a word? If it isn't, I just made it up. This way it matches, and I like that it also goes with the gold that is in the paper. So some of the splatters got a little bigger than I wanted, and it is thicker than using like a thinner paint or a shimmer brush or something like that. So it took a little bit longer to dry as well. So now I'm creating those pink centers I talked about for the plumerias, and I just wanted to try this out to see how I liked it. I've got my favorite embellishments that have like iridescent and gold flecks in them, and then I have the Melon Mambo Stamp and Blend marker, which is an alcohol marker, so it will stay on when you color your gems. And so I use that for the plumerias, and I really like the look, so I'll go ahead and do that for the rest of them. Now I thought I was done, but then I realized I was missing something up at the top. So I dug in my stash and I found this sticker sheet. It was from the Four Seasons summer pack from Close to My Heart, and it had some very similar colors. So I pulled these two stickers that helped fill in the top a little bit, and then a few little scatter elements. There were a couple of these light pink hearts that I put in a couple of places, and I really like how that helped fill out and balance everything. And then there's also these little word strips. I love using word strips, and I was glad there were a few in the right colors that worked. So I'm going to audition those in a few places around the page. I like the contrast of the green on the pink at the bottom, and then I decided to put both of the other ones up here at the top. Again, I thought I was done, but I found some black chipboard hearts in my stash, and I really like how that looked scattered around the little clusters to help bring in the black in the title. So that's how I finished it off, and my journaling will go right at the bottom there. And then let me bring in the original layout that I scrap lifted of myself so you can see how similar but very different they are. I do have a process video for that one as well, and it's on the screen right here, so you can click that and I'll meet you over there. You can find still shots of today's layout over on Instagram and Facebook. I have the links down in the description below. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.